Coming up on the College Fantasy Reign podcast, as fall football camps begin to wrap up around the country, I do our final preseason review of the news that's been emerging. Let's roll. Are you ready to reign in college fantasy football? College Fantasy Reign is your premier CFF resource with insights from a CFF pioneer. Secure your new reign. This is the College Fantasy Reign podcast, and you're listening to Fantasy Reign Rundown with Joe Arpasi. Welcome, everybody, to the College Fantasy Reign podcast. This is College Fantasy Reign Rundown, our off-season podcast show. I am your host, Joe Arpasi, and you can find everything that I do for college fantasy football over at collegefantasyreign.com. I'd also recommend please subscribe to the podcast on either YouTube or Spotify, and I highly recommend that you follow me on X at CFR_Joe for all of the latest happenings that are going on. And I'm going to kick off things with a few announcements, as I always do, and as I've been doing this entire offseason. I'm going to start by talking about the fact that I changed website providers over the offseason. At the start of last year, my website was known as Let Purple Reign, and it was being hosted on Substack. If you were a follower over on Substack, you are no longer followed or subscribed with the same user information because I am completely off of Substack's network now. So what you'll have to do is if you go over, during this season, in mid-November, I rebranded Let Purple Reign into College Fantasy Reign. That is now the new website. So if you go over to the website, collegefantasyreign.com, and you go into the create a login setup, you'll have to set something up from scratch. The information that you had previously on Substack will not work there, unfortunately. When you're over at the new website, if you look at the header, you will see that there's a link for a new Discord channel. This is absolutely free for everyone to use. You can discuss college fantasy football and college fantasy football. If you have openings for your leagues, you can post them there. Or if you're trying to find a new league, you can do that as well. And I also will open up chats there for different podcast episodes. And really, since we're wrapping up the preseason, the main thing that I'll be doing there for the podcast is taking your questions for the in-season Stardom Situm shows. I do a thread on X to get your questions, but then I'll also be asking for your questions over on the Discord, where I can answer your lineup questions. So that is a great resource if you're wanting to get some help. And once again, too, it's absolutely free for everyone to use. So now that we're diving into what this episode is going to be about, this is part 3 of our Fall Camp Quick Hitters series. I do a fast-paced review of injury updates and position battle news from around the country, and this will be the final episode of the season and of the off-season. This is the very last thing for Draft Central before we move full speed into the season here. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's dive into some college fantasy football. Before I go over these injury updates, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And as I said, if this is the first time that you're catching Fall Camp Quick Hitters, this is a very fast-paced review of what's been going on to get you up to speed without you having to spend 30 minutes reading something or 45 minutes, an hour listening to a podcast. I'm going to be short and sweet, not a lot of commentary, just the facts coming at you here. So as we talk about injury updates, we're going to start at Alabama. Wide receiver Latsier Brooks has been dealing with an undisclosed injury, and he has been held out of several scrimmages and was practicing as non-contact only. His condition has improved, and he's now being listed as probable for week one. Over at Arkansas, running back Sutton Smith, who's had a lower leg injury, has been cleared for the entire season. At Illinois, wide receiver Hudson Clement, who's been dealing with a concussion, he has returned to full participation in practice. And wide receiver Jayshon Platt, who has an undisclosed injury, is doubtful for week 1. Over at Louisiana, or Louisiana Lafayette, as a lot of us old-timers know them, wide receiver Shelton Sampson, who's had a knee injury, he has returned to participating in team drills at practice. Over at LSU, Jackson Harris, who has an undisclosed injury. He was limited to non contact drills only, but has now made a full recovery. At Missouri, the update on running back Ahmad Hardy, who had the gunshot wound to the leg injury, is that he is not expected to be cleared to return until mid September at the earliest. What's important to know is that it's not known if that means that he's cleared to return to practice or if he'll be available for game action by mid September. At New Mexico, quarterback Jack Lane, who has an elbow injury, is officially questionable for week one. North Carolina, over at North Carolina, the news about Colorado State transfer tight end Jackson Warren is that he is expected to miss a significant period of time with an undisclosed injury. At Penn State, both running back Carson Hansen and Brett Elkiston, who have undisclosed injuries, they've missed a couple of practices, but they have returned since then. At SMU, quarterback Kevin Jennings, who's been dealing with a finger injury, is expected to play in week one. At USC, wide receiver Tanook Hines, who's had an undisclosed injury, he has returned to practice and was not held out of contact drills. So that's a big positive sign there. That wraps up the injury part because that's the slowest one. The position battles, there's been a lot of news in the last week. I'm going to grab a little more water before we dive into them. Probably the biggest bit of news, and I'm kind of wrapping a lot of specifics up into one thing here at the start. I'm talking about some of the new player eligibility lawsuits that are going on. There have been new legal proceedings where players have been given an extra year of eligibility under one, court ruling or another here. I'm keeping things, like I said, grouped together here. But one of the biggest fallouts that's come from this is that there have been several players that entered NFL fall training camps this year that have now decided to leave and put their names into the transfer portal because they viewed this as something that they could get an injunction for and they think that they could win. At the time of this filming, the Big Ten, SEC, and the Big 12 as a whole, as conferences, as individually, have created rules preventing teams in those conferences from signing any player that had signed an NFL contract this season. Those conferences have, in those rules, have penalties for any coaches that break these rules here. I'm sure that there's going to be more legal action that happens, especially with these NFL guys. So stay tuned. That's why I mentioned I highly recommend you follow me on X at CFR_Joe. That's where I'm going to get the most up-to-date information. Everything that I'm reviewing with you today, you would have already seen on my X. This is just kind of a pulling everything together from the week and giving it to you in one big shot. But that the NFL, the rulings with these players that are leaving training camps, I think is going to be a big thing to watch. So that was kind of the big general thing to cover here. Now let's dive into the fast-paced schools again. Over at Alabama, Keelan Russell has been named the starting quarterback. At Arizona State, quarterback Cutter Boley has taken the edge in the QB battle. At Arkansas, quarterback KJ Jackson has been named the starter for week one. At Ball State, Kendrick Luster has been named the starting quarterback. At Cincinnati, quarterback J.C. French has officially been named the starter. At Duke, quarterback Walker Eggett has been named the starter. At East Carolina, running back Ashton Gray has not run away with the starting running back job yet. The coaches have stated that they view Gary, along with Michael Allen and TJ Engelman, as all starter caliber players. At Eastern Michigan, running back, I misspelled it here in my notes, Braden Bennett sits as the running back 3 on the team's first depth chart that came out. Emerson Blue and Joey Matford are listed as the co-starters, with Blue being listed first and Matford being the or behind him. Over at Florida, Georgia Tech transfer Aaron Philo has been named the starting quarterback. At Georgia Southern, quarterback Max Johnson will be the starter for week one. At Jacksonville State, Running back Christian Lando was not listed on the team's first depth chart. They only listed 2 running backs. Those guys were Jalen Likely as the running back 1 and Cedric Kawami as running back 2. At Kentucky, head coach Will Sloan stated that tight end Willie Rodriguez is critical for the offense and what they want to do, and that Rodriguez will be put in a lot of plays where he will be the first or second read in that particular pass concept. So that's big news about Rodriguez's role in the offense. At Miami of Ohio, Kansas transfer David McComb has been named the starting quarterback. At Memphis, Marcus Stokes has been named the starting quarterback. At Nevada, quarterback Carter Jones has been named the starting quarterback for Week 1. New Mexico State, running back James Jones tops the running back depth chart for Week 1. At North Carolina, tight end Jelani Thurman is expected to play a key role in the offense this season. That was the main phrase that was being used. I do not have any deeper information than that, guys. North Dakota State, running back DJ Scott was officially listed as the RB1 on the team's first depth chart. So wheels up for DJ Scott this season. North Texas, quarterback Taven Jackson has the lead for the starting quarterback job. At Northwestern, quarterback Aiden Childs has been named the starter for Week 1. At Ohio, Nick Palos, I'm sure I'm getting that name wrong because I am great at names, guys. But Nick has been named the starting quarterback for Week 1. At Old Dominion, as no surprise, quarterback Quinn Heinickel is officially named the starting quarterback. At Oregon State, Mercer transfer Braden Atkinson has been named the starting quarterback. At Penn State, running back James Peoples has been described by the coaches as a star in practice and stacking up really special days. It's the first time that we've heard any positive news coming out of the coaches about James People. That is something I've been keeping my eye on all camp. At Rutgers, Dylan Lonergan has been named the starting quarterback. At Sacramento State, quarterback Carson Conklin will get the start in Week 1. At South Florida, LSU transfer Michael Van Buren has been named the starting QB. At Temple, running back Sam Brown missed a little time in camp, but head coach Tyler Walker said that he would be available to play if they had to play 2 days. So it's just more, he's got some bumps and bruises, nothing more than that, guys. At Tennessee, 5-star freshman quarterback Faison Brandon has been named the Week 1 starter. Texas State, it is being predicted that running backs Tajay Atkinson, Torrance Burgess, and Jalen Jenkins will rotate through with the first team offense. At Texas Tech, quarterback Tommy Castellanos has signed with the Red Raiders and will serve as the QB2 behind Will Hammond. There is no quarterback battle happening here. At Tulane, Zion Chris Gramillion was named the starting quarterback. And on the team's latest Week 1 depth chart, running back Jamari McClure is listed as the top running back, but there is an or behind him with Maurice Turner and Johnny Daniels. McClure is dealing with an injury, and last I heard, he was questionable for Week 1. It is good to see that they are still listing him on the depth chart. At UNLV, quarterback Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji will split reps in Week 1. At Vanderbilt, veteran quarterback Blaze Berlowitz has been named the starter over 5-star freshman Jared Curtis. At Virginia, running back Jaquil Middlebrook is listed as the starting running back on the team's depth chart. Running back Peyton Lewis is listed 4th on the depth chart in a group of 4 players, all sharing a possible running back 2 tag. For any of you that have not looked at depth charts over the last couple of years, they'll have like 2 players and then they'll have an or between them, saying that it could be one of these 2 players for this running back 2 spot. Well, there's 4 different players that are all sharing ors. So that's what I mean by a group of 4 running backs sharing the possible RB2 tag. But I did find it interesting that Peyton Lewis was listed 4th on the total list of running backs. And also running back Solomon Beebe, he has been suspended indefinitely after being arrested, but he does still remain on the football team. At Wake Forest, quarterback Gio Lopez has been named the starting quarterback. At Washington State, UC Davis transfer Caden Pinnock has been named the starting quarterback. And at Wyoming, quarterback Jay Sabel was named the starter. That's it for today's Fantasy Rain Rundown show. Once again, please follow and like over on YouTube and Spotify. I want to thank all of you that watched today. I want to thank everyone that is subscribed to the show on both those websites and who is subscribed over at collegefantasyrain.com. Thanks for joining the College Fantasy Rain podcast. Your CFF Rain starts here.